Hey everyone, my name is Hannah Goodwin, and this is my chapter presentation over Chapter 10, the Affective Domain. The affective domain is part of the three domains of learning, the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. We are obviously going to be talking about the affective domain. According to the book, the affective domain is learning about one's emotions, understanding another person's feelings, acquiring a concept of self, and developing self-efficacy. They're all hallmarks of the affective domain. Some of the main points from this chapter that we will be talking about are emerging affecting development, stress and resilience, how children react to overwhelming emotional demand, effective development in children with special needs, implementing developmentally appropriate curriculum and instruction in the affective domain, and then there are some activity suggestions for the affective domain. The first thing we're going to be talking about is emerging affective development. Emotional development is something that Erik Erikson taught us about. According to Erikson, human development ranges on a continuum characterized by opposite emotional poles in each of the stages. The stages range in ages from infancy to 65 plus years of age. Some of the stages range in infancy to 18 months as the trust versus mistrust. And the task says, establish a trusting relationship with the primary caregiver to develop trust in self, others, and the world as a place where needs are met. So this would be like a child forming a relationship with, say, a teacher or with a family member that they don't know very well, but they're trusting them. They've developed this sense that they can tell that they can trust this person. The next stage ranges from 18 months to 3 years old. This is the autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is where they strive for independence. So this is where that terrible two comes from. And when they start realizing that they have personalities and they want to do things on their own and try things by themselves and become really independent. The next one is the 3 to 6 years old, and that's initiative versus guilt. This is the plan and carry out activities, learn society's boundaries. So it says family caregivers. They know this is where they start learning about rules and what they can and can't do and how they're going to test what they're not supposed to do. If they are told not to jump on the couch, they're going to try it anyways. If they're told not to eat dessert before dinner, they're going to ask to do it anyways. The next one is the 6 to 12 years, industry versus inferiority. This says be productive and successful. This is when this is around the school age years when they first start kindergarten. This is when they're going to start realizing that, hey, this is what I can do, and I need to figure this out by myself, and I need to become successful, and I need to learn these things for the future. The next one is 12 to 20 years. This is identity versus role confusion. It says establish social and occupational identities. So this is where they finally start realizing that they finally start to realize what they want to do. You know, this is the age where they're in middle school to high school, and they're realizing that, hey, I want to become a doctor, or hey, I want to become a veterinarian, or hey, for all of us, it's hey, I wanted to become a teacher. And so they're realizing what they need to do to get to these roles, and it's they form key relationship with their peers too. The next one is 20 to 40 years, and it says intimacy versus isolation. They form strong friendships and achieve a sense of love and companionship. This is when they start forming connections and relationships with friends and spouses and lovers and partners. This is when it's time to quote unquote settle down, when you find the one, and that's why it's 20 to 40 years. The next one is 40 to 65 years, and it says generativity versus stagnation. Be productive in terms of family and work. So this is when they start to form relationships with children and coworkers and cultures. You know, we finally start to realize why things are the way they are, why we do things the way we do. We form even more relationships. And then the last one is 65 plus years, and this is ego integrity versus despair, and look back at life as meaningful and productive. This is kind of like a scrapbook. You look at this and think, oh, I did this when I was this age, or I should have done this at this age and should have waited until this age to do this, or I should have kept this person around. This is a way to just go back and think about what you did, and this is a big stage. I just read all these from page 304 in the book under the emotional development section. On page 305 in the book, about the third-ish paragraph down, the very first sentence says, children pay a great deal of attention to how key adults in their lives respond to their negative emotions. If our response to a simple tumble is relaxed, they quickly get back into the play. I've noticed this a lot at the daycare that I work at. I was scratched the other day, and I put a Band-Aid on it. And so all the kids are like, what happened? What happened? You know, they want to know what happened, and say if something happens to them, they know that a Band-Aid makes everything better. And that's all you have to do. You just have to show them that we take emotions too, but we know how to handle ours. And we need to show them how they're able to start handling theirs. The next paragraph talks about empathy, and empathy is the feeling of feeling someone else's, the ability to understand another person's feelings by feeling the same emotion, and it's a critical component of emotional development. This is, say, if you see someone else is sad, and you might maybe start to get sad, or if you're happy, you try to make them happy as well. It's the feeling of you may not know what's going on in that person's life, but you can understand, and you can get down to their level to feel. In the paragraph, it also says that teachers are effective in helping young children develop this important sense of others when they model empathy and caring behavior. And I think that is 100% true. Like my example, they could tell that I was upset and I was hurt, and so they were feeling empathetic for me. And I know when they get injured and are sick, I always feel really sad for them. Next, we have self-awareness and sense of competence. Like everything else in an organism, an individual's concept of self develops and changes during the lifespan. However, evidence indicates that a person's global self-concept, all the beliefs a person has about him or herself, is structured fairly early in life and appears to be well developed by the time a child is 8 or 9 years old. Components of the self, one's perceptions about how competent one is intellectually, physically, emotionally, and so forth, are known as self-esteem. These evolve from children's many interactions with others and the demands that are placed on them and the emotions that result from these experiences. This came from page 306. And I think sometimes we don't realize how a child really feels on the inside. We only see the way they act on the outside. And I think when they start developing self-awareness and their sense of competence, it's when they finally start to become themselves. And I think this is a big part of when encouragement and love and nurturing in the classroom needs to really be expressed and shown in ways other than just words. You know, if a child gets 100 or all of the answers right on their homework, yes, we can put stickers on there and we can say good job, but I think it would be even better if we could personally say, hey, good job, little Ben, or hey, Susan, you did a great job on your test. You know, you studied really hard and it paid off. And I just think that sometimes we don't realize these things, and we take these little bitty things that could be so easy to do in a classroom for granted. One part of the book on page 306, it says, feelings of self-worth are reflected in a child's overt behavior in the classroom, in the peer group, and on the playground. If you see a kid that he knows he's not doing so great, or he's not as good at kickball as the other kids, you know, maybe he thinks he's not a fast runner, or there's a little girl who she doesn't enjoy coloring as much as some of the others. And this doesn't mean anything, although to them it may think that there's something wrong with them, or it might make them feel really left out if they're not doing the same things as the other kids. So, I think we just need to watch, as teachers, need to watch these problems and see if anything raises red flags to us. Let's see. Children's perceptions of themselves are the result of mirroring process as they interact with important others in their world. So this is where a lot of the imitation comes from. You know, they see one kid do something and then they're going to try and do it too. Some high self-esteem comes from, there's a list on page 306, and a few of them I'm going to read. Some of them says, realizing that others like your ideas and will follow your lead. So this is where it's like copycatting and follow the leader and things like that come in play. You know, if a little boy sees, or if a little girl sees her friend always wearing necklaces and dresses and always dressing super fancy, then maybe she's going to want to do the same. And same thing for little boys. Or if they see them wearing cool shoes, they're going to want to do the same because they think that's cool. They see that their friend looks cool, so they're going to want to do the same thing. Being acknowledged and appreciated for exactly who you are. So this is something where we realize that not every student is the same. Nobody is the exact same. They're all unique. And there may be some students that are super outgoing, and teachers love that. There's always the ones that are, their parents are always working with them, and they know all the answers. They're super smart, but then there's others that their parents aren't able to work with them or just don't. And so they kind of sit back and just do schoolwork, barely pass it, just make it through. And we have to show them that we as teachers appreciate them, and we know that things can be tough at home, but in our classroom, they're still the same as everybody else. We have to show everyone love and show everyone the same amount of love. Knowing that you can trust people to be concerned about your feelings and needs. I think I'm going to talk more about this one in a little bit when we talk about toxic home life. I think that one has a lot to do with that situation, and so I'll save that one. Okay, next we're going to be talking about concepts of emotional intelligence. According to the book, there are 5 basic sets of skills that constitute emotional intelligence. So on page 308, there's a green chart at the top, and we're going to go through them. So the first one is self-awareness, and it says the ability to identify your thoughts, feelings, and strengths, understanding and recognizing how thoughts, feelings, and strengths influence your choices and actions. So I think this obviously goes back to when we talked about self-awareness, and when they really just start to develop their their self-confidence, their self-esteem, their self-worth, all these kind of things, when they realize that, hey, I'm great at this, or hey, I'm not so great at this, but I'm better at other things. When they really start to figure out their feelings, they start to develop emotions, and they realize that, hey, this makes me upset, and this makes me really happy. So they really start to be able to understand and recognize. The next one is social awareness, and it says the capacity to recognize and understand others' thoughts and feelings, developing empathy, ability to take on the perspective of others. So we talked about empathy. I think this goes back to being in a classroom setting, and when they have to realize that there's other people in the class, and hey, if someone is upset because they didn't make a good grade, or they need help with something, that hey, I can use my social awareness and I can go help this person. The next one is self-management. It says the ability to manage your emotions so that they facilitate rather than interfere with the task at hand, setting long and short-term goals, dealing with obstacles that may come your way. I think this part could be used a lot with the portfolios that we've been talking about in the student-led discussions. This is where they could make their own goals and say, hey, I know this right now, but in a month I want to know this. Or, hey, I know this right now, but in a year from now I want to know this. So that's part of the setting long and short-term goals, and they could, decide how they want to do that. The next one is responsible decision-making. And it says the skill to generate, implement, and evaluate positive and informed solutions to problems. Tendency to consider the long-term consequences of your actions for yourself and others. So this is where the following the rules, and, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? If someone else in class is making a bad choice, this is where they have to think to themselves, he's doing this and he's going to get in trouble, but should I do that? Maybe it might look fun, but there are always consequences to the actions. And the last one is relationship skills, and it says the ability to resist negative peer pressure and to resolve conflicts in such a way that you maintain healthy and rewarding connections with individuals and groups. So I think this goes back to responsible decision making. It says resist negative peer pressure, and unfortunately peer pressure is a big thing these days, and yes, it can be negative. They just have to find a way to turn it around and be positive and to make their own decisions and not follow the lead or follow the leader of anything. The next one says, the next part says children are also construct a knowledge base that includes physical knowledge, logical mathematical knowledge, representational knowledge, social conventional knowledge, and metacognitive knowledge. I'm not going to read the whole things for those. They're pretty long. All of this comes from page 308 in the book. So physical knowledge says observable attributes of objects in physical play. So this is obviously, it says with adult guidance, children become increasingly aware of their tendencies to react and behave under certain conditions. Who am I? What do I feel and under what circumstances? When do I feel valued, secure, and most comfortable? The The next one says logical mathematical knowledge, relationships between objects and phenomenon. Along with increasing cognition, children develop the logical organization to deal with incoming affective information. How am I like others? How am I different from others? And to recognize and contrast the distinct and recurrent patterns in their behavior and that of others. I think that could be tied back to self and social awareness. It says, how am I like others? How am I different from others? This could be a way to get them talking, get them to recognize each other's differences and similarities. The next one is representational knowledge, imaginative expression of symbolic thought. That's like it says children learn new ways to express their inner emotional thoughts and feelings through the increased use of speech as language develops, through the refined use of body language, and through written expression as literacy skills emerge. So this could be something as simple as like putting on a play or using something in the room and have like puppets or something. The next one is social conventional knowledge. It's cultural and societal conventions, rules, and viewpoints. So this one is a big one in schools these days because we have a wide range of different cultures now. And so this could be something that, you could have like a cultural day and have someone talk about, everyone bring in like a poster or some kind of food dish and have them talk about their culture and how things are different and what are their rules and how they view things. And so the next one is metacognitive knowledge, and it says proficient strategies for monitoring thinking progress. Children increase their metacognitive abilities by putting their sensory channel modalities to work to investigate emotional cause and effect. So they realize that, hey, if I do this, this is the repercussion, or if I don't do this, this is the repercussion. So the next one is stress and resilience, how children react to overwhelming emotional coping with normal life stressors. Some children have little ability to bounce back from negative experiences, whereas others seem to have tremendous resilience. That comes from page 309. And the very beginning sentence, the second sentence says, when stressful situations persist for long periods and when the child is unable to experience relief, symptoms may appear such as increased irritability, depression, anxiety, sleep disturbances, somatic problems, or dramatic increase or decrease in appetite. These are all super obvious things to look for in the classroom. Obviously, if you have a child who's always happy and they become depressed or they don't eat as much, or if you have a child that you can tell is super irritable, then hey, you need to realize that something is stressing them out, and we need to try to get to the bottom of it and figure out what we as teachers can do to help this child. Some examples of childhood stressors: there are individual stressors, there are intrafamilial stressors, and there's extrafamilial stressors. A few of the individual stressors say things like inadequate or unbalanced diet. Is this child getting enough to eat at home? Are they getting not enough? Are they not getting enough fruits and veggies and they're only eating unhealthy fried stuff? Another one says heavy exposure to television, unmonitored use of video games. This is a very, 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 very big thing these days. There are children as young as age 4 and 5 getting iPads or sitting in front of the TVs, coming home from school and sitting in front of a TV for hours and hours and just watching TV. These days unfortunately there are some bad things on TV, and even in common shows these days such as SpongeBob. I know many families that have cut SpongeBob out of letting their kids watch it because it's gotten so bad these days. Intrafamilial stressors, some of the ones of that are birth of a sibling. That's a lot. That happens a lot. Death of a loved one or pet. Unfortunately, those happen, and they're both very sad. Abuse, neglect. That's a biggie. We'll talk about that later when we talk about toxic family home life. Extra familial stressors, unsatisfactory childcare. That's like afternoon daycare, or if they have a babysitter or a nanny and they're not happy with that. Lack of appreciation of cultural differences by others. That could go back to when we talked about self-awareness and social awareness and the social conventional knowledge. And safe factors in the community, where do they live? Is their home life safe? Is their neighborhood safe? Just all things like that could put some stress on a child, even a young child, and that's things that we need to work on and look out for. So next is children in toxic and violent environments. Unfortunately, these situations happen, and they're super hard to deal with. We've currently, at the daycare I work at, we are currently investigating a child abuse case right now that is super hard, and it's heavy on my heart, and it's so sad because I'm so close to the child, and the parents, they're super sweet, but that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that they're not going to abuse their child if that's just the way that they are. So how do we as teachers handle these types of situations? Me personally, I would not go to the parent with questions. I would go immediately and tell the principal, or I did an internship with DHS, which is the Home Human Services, but I know personally you call DCS, which is Child Services, so I would go straight to the principal if I suspected a case of violent home life, and I would say, look, we need to call DCS and get this taken care of. The classroom should be a safe and welcoming environment so that every single child feels safe. I said, so if a child is being abused at home, they can come to school and know that they are not going to be hit. They're not going to be told they can't do something. They're not going to be told you're doing this wrong and then be reprimanded. They are going to know that it's a safe and welcoming environment. And that goes back to, just creating a great relationship with not only the student but their family. So you have a good feeling, or you have a bad feeling, when you know these parents and these children. So the next one is developing resilience. Resilience is the capacity to rise above difficult circumstances, the trait that allows us all to exist in this less than perfect world while moving forward with reasonable optimism and confidence. Blanketing children with protection while reinforcing their strengths requires belief in the following concepts. In coping with stressors, children use the same sorts of strategies that us as adults use, including defense mechanisms as denial, we do that as adults, regression, we do that, withdrawal, we do that, and impulsive acting out. I've personally seen impulsive acting out in the daycare that I work out. Sometimes parents, it doesn't make them bad parents, but sometimes they don't tell their children no. They let them always do what they want and always get their way, and then when a child is told no, they start acting out. This is a sign of resilience. Some other red flags that signal that children are out of coping strategies include not wanting to attend school, sleep problems, age-inappropriate behavior. This happens a lot if they have an older sibling and watch them do this, then they'll pick up on it. Physical symptoms, this may include scratches or bruises or anything like that. We can determine whether a child is emotionally healthy by working with them and watching them, and even if they seem troubled, and then we can see if they're able to do the following, if they can settle down and concentrate after they've gotten upset, or if they can depart from their family without undue stress. Thankfully, on page 312, it starts on 311, but on 312, there are 6 strategies that teachers can use to build better resilience in young children. And the first one is build in more opportunities for play. Modify children's difficult behavior without sending a message that the child is not okay. 3 says teach them ways to become effective problem solvers, which translates into the power of independence. 4 says teach them ways to better express their thoughts, ideas, and feelings. 5, build a rapport and connectedness in the classroom. And 6 says know what goes on in children's lives outside of the classroom, what supports they have, and which ones they are missing. And I could sit here and talk all day long about all of these, but I think we all have our ways to do this, and we all know which ones would best fit our classroom. So the next one is effective development in children with special needs. I think teachers have a different understanding of teaching children with special needs. Most children with special needs, if they are put into a classroom, have a helper with them. They normally have an adult that comes with them. So it's not even as much as the teacher is teaching all of the children plus a child with special needs. they normally have a helper with them. So when a teacher says, oh, that would be nice, but that puts more work on me, no, it doesn't, because they have a helper there. So children with special needs need just as much, if not more attention than your quote-unquote regular children. They both need love and nurturing inside and outside of the classroom. And I think it's great when children with special needs can be included in the classroom setting. We've all talked about the inclusion, so we all know what it means. I feel like it not only helps them, but it also helps the other students to see that not everybody is the same, and there are children that need more help than they do at doing normal everyday activities like walking and talking and eating. It helps the child that has special needs get more social interaction, and it helps the quote-unquote regular children see that, hey, I may get mad that I can't do this, but this child will never be able to do this, and it puts it into perspective for them. There are many, many, many types of special needs. Autism is unfortunately the most popular in the book. It says children with autism may exhibit such behaviors as repetitive motor mannerisms, examples like hand or flapping, finger flapping, persistent preoccupation with parts of an object, so they get fixated on one part of an object and don't pay attention to the rest, a delay in language development or repetitive use of language, lack of make-believe or socially initiated play, so this is like they want to sit by themselves or they want to do things alone and they don't realize that they can work in a group. Lack of eye contact and failure to develop peer relationships. That goes back to the lack of make-believe or socially initiated play. Number 2, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. It's a neurobiological syndrome that appears in early childhood and may have a pervasive and long-lasting negative effect on affective and social development in children. Page 314 says, according to statistics from the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 11% of school-age children have been diagnosed as ADHD, a 53% rise in the past decades. About 2/3 of children diagnosed are receiving stimulants such as Ritalin or Adderall, and pediatric neurologists and physicians have expressed concern. So there is a way to not prevent, but to help treat ADHD. Some other ones are sensory processing disorders, so this is sometimes referred to as out of sync or sensory sensitive children with sensory processing disorders may exhibit over-responsiveness or under-responsiveness to touch or movement, sight, sounds, taste, or smell. So this is like if they don't like the feel of like cotton balls or shaving cream, or they don't like even the feel of crayons. They have a sensory processing disorder. Another one is dual language learners, and these are children who are dual language learners, which means they speak 2 languages, and they have special needs in terms of their English language because they are not able to understand us, and sometimes we can't understand them. So this doesn't necessarily mean they have special needs. This just means they have like a learning delay, and they're going to need help, trying to translate their language to English or English to their language. Lastly, we're going to be talking about implementing developmentally appropriate curriculum and instruction in the affective domain. The purpose and goals for affective domain say the purpose of the affective domain is for children to see themselves as valuable and capable. This is as easy as when I first started and I said we need to praise them and say, hey, you're doing a great job at this, or hey, can we work on this? Every child should have either a few or a lot of goals they will accomplish in a certain amount of time. This goes back to helping them set up their short and long-term goals. Some common goals are to understand how circumstances and events influence personal emotions, demonstrate trust in others, control their behavior without external reminders, and identify characteristics and qualities that make them unique. Starting on page 317 in the book, there are a list of 27 different affective domain teaching strategies that we could all implement in our classroom. My favorites are 16, which says help children evaluate their accomplishments, and that goes back to the praising. And number 27, that says work cooperatively with children's families to communicate information about emotional development and to monitor for stress-related behaviors. I've said it, I think it's very important to have a great communication system with families, and I think that helps not only the families but their children as well. So that's it. Thank you all for listening. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, I hope you learned a lot. Hey everyone, my name is Goodwin, and this is my chapter presentation over Chapter 10, the Affective Domain.